Today I'm sharing my current planner and journal lineup, as well as some ideas of how to fill notebooks if, like me, you've got a lot of empty ones lying around and you're looking for inspiration on how to use them. I will say up front that it's quite difficult to show some of the planners and journals because there's personal information in them that I don't want to broadcast on the internet. However, I've tried to work around it and hopefully you get the idea. First up, we have this notebook therapy notebook, which I use as my everyday journal. I used to have a bullet journal, but I don't really use the principles of bullet journaling anymore, so I don't want to call it that. It's simply just a space where I write about my day. I use happy planner stickers to decorate the pages and then write a journal entry around them. So it makes it a little bit more fun, but essentially it is just a journal. I also put my monthly reviews in here, so every month I write about highlights, challenges and favourites. My favourites is usually things like TV show, game, music, workout, that sort of thing. I keep my everyday journal in this coral and ink pouch, which is really handy because I can keep pens, stickers, washi tape, etc. with it. And obviously if I ever wanted to travel with my journal, then I can keep everything in one place. Next up, we have the Leuchtturm Some Lines a Day journal, which is set up for 5 years. I don't know if Leuchtturm is actually how you pronounce that. I've heard it said different ways, but hopefully I've done an okay job. I really hope I can keep up with this across the 5 years. I think it'll be really good to look back at it. I try and write the most significant part of my day, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. However, some days are just average and I'll just write a few sentences to summarise what I've been up to. Of course, you don't need to buy a dedicated journal for this. You could set up maybe a slightly chunkier A5 journal, just split the pages into 5 as you can see here. But I like the fact that this was set up and ready to go. If you're wondering, no dog yet and we're in July. However, I'm staying optimistic for the rest of the year. Moment of appreciation for this book pouch that I bought in Amsterdam to keep this in because I thought to give it the best chance at actually lasting the 5 years, I should give it some protection. Next we have a Compoko notebook, which is lined pages, and I use this to write responses to prompts from a book that I'm currently reading called The Book of Alchemy. So how this works is each day you read an excerpt from a different writer, and then there's a prompt at the end of that for you to respond to, and there's different themes throughout the book as well. So it's sectioned into those themes. I will say that this has encouraged me to think about different things that I don't think about in my usual journaling practice, so it's been really good. And I think there's about 100 prompts in total, so it should keep me occupied for a little while. I would recommend this book if you are just starting out with journaling, or if you maybe want to try a different approach and think about some different things. If your journal practice is just feeling a little bit dull maybe and you want to breathe new life into it, then I found this book a really good way to do that. I also use a classic vertical happy planner, and I'll be honest, between this, the Some Lines a Day journal and my everyday journal, I do find I'm duplicating information in all 3 of them. I plan to persevere until the end of 2026 with them, but I'll probably be thinking about how else I want to do things for 2027. I use my happy planner for a bit of everything, so I tend to write about my mood, to-do lists, and a few lines about the day or specific memories if I go somewhere in particular for the first time, or if I'm going for a meal with my family and things like that. The reason that you've seen a blank spread here is that I couldn't find one that I'd filled in that didn't contain personal information that would have taken me a while to hide or obscure, so I thought I'd show just a blank one. I apologise for that. I know it probably would be better to see how it's used in practice, and maybe in future I will show an example of how I actually use it day to day. I also have a classic horizontal happy planner, which I use as my exercise tracker. I previously used the Skinny Classic for this, and to be honest, I think somewhere in between the two would be the best fit for me. I found the Skinny Classic didn't always have enough space, but then this sometimes has too much space, so it can be difficult. However, I also tried the dedicated fitness planner that Happy Planner had a little while ago, and that did not work for me at all. At the start of the month, I write my goals in here. They're usually based on whatever Apple Fitness suggests, but there will also be random things sometimes like try Pilates. I I write my weight at the start of the month as well, and then at the end of the month I go back and write my favourite workout from the month. I use the monthly calendar to write down my steps each day, and then I write down my average for the month at the top in the right hand corner. I find this works really well for me. Day to day I write down what workouts I do. These are all Peloton classes, but whatever you get up to, whatever weight you might be lifting, you could jot down in here. And then finally at the back, there's an annual Peloton challenge where it's based on how many minutes of exercise you do. So I write down the date whenever I hit each milestone. I have a field notes notebook for content creation related thoughts and notes and things like that. I specifically wanted something that was small and easy to carry around, as I tend to have ideas when I'm out and about. So this fits just in any bag basically, or even in a pocket, and I can just carry it around and jot things down as I go. Next, I have a Typhosi, again, not good with pronunciations. I have one of their notebooks, and this is for photos. So I started a photo book once I got a Fujifilm camera because I felt like I wanted to print off the pictures rather than storing them digitally. And obviously you can do this if you take photos on your phone or with a different type of camera, and it's nice to see them printed. I use a Canon selfie printer, but whatever works for you. The advantage of it being a square notebook is that I can stick the photos in either horizontally or vertically without having to physically turn the notebook itself. I use a label printer to write the date and the location of the photo underneath. I've blanked that out for privacy reasons here, but that's the information that's underneath. And I use a label printer because my handwriting is so inconsistent, and I thought it'd be nicer for this specific purpose to keep things consistent. So I like how that looks. I also decided to use one of my Arch and Olive notebooks for a space to write about autism. I was diagnosed as autistic last year, and I set this up around the time that I was going through the process of the assessment. I just wanted somewhere I could document the journey. I have a lot of catching up to do with this because I've since been to a post-diagnostic group that lasted for 6 weeks, and there was a lot of useful information and a lot of insights that came from that. So I'd like to update this with some of them. However, I need to sit down and organise my notes and get everything in here. Although I did write about this process in my other journals as well, I am glad that I started a dedicated notebook for it. And of course, not everyone is autistic, but if you have other long-term health conditions, it could maybe be a space to track symptoms, to track thoughts, to track research. If, like me, you dig into things a little bit and find various bits of information that you want to come back to. I also have nice little pages in here just as little pick-me-ups to keep things looking cute. Here we have another Arch and Olive notebook, which I've written is a lettering journal, but I don't know if you'd count it as a journal. I've had this on the go since 2021, so that probably gives you an idea of how often I use it. I use it a lot less than I used to, and I mainly use this if I want to practice writing particular words before I write them into my planner or journal. However, I used to use them for drills and practicing when I was first learning modern lettering. If you are practicing your handwriting or learning modern calligraphy or anything like that, then I would recommend a dedicated space to practice because it's really nice to look back and see your progress. This is another notebook therapy notebook, and I guess this is the traveler's size, which I use for data from Apple Music. Essentially what I do is I write down my top artists and my top songs of each month, and then I do the yearly replay at the end as well. Again, I haven't actually updated this in 2026. I'm sure there will be people judging my music taste, and that's absolutely fine. To be honest, what this has made me realise is that my music taste hasn't actually changed that much in the past 5 years, but I enjoy doing it, and it's all good fun. This next one might be a bit niche, I don't know. If not, please let me know if you have something similar in the comments. But this is an Arch and Olive notebook that is dedicated to all things autumn, and I started this because I'd accumulated so many autumn washi tapes and stickers because it is my absolute favourite season, and I felt like I had way too many that I could ever use annually in other planners and notebooks, so I thought I'd set up a space for them. I've actually only done a few pages in this, and I tend to write down lyrics or quotes related to autumn, as well as do collages and swatches of washi tape. But I imagine that I'll come back to this as we head into September, October and November, and it'll start filling up a little bit more. You could do this for your own favourite season, or you could do it to celebrate your favourite parts of each, or maybe this is just definitely a me thing and nobody needs this. But it's an idea if you want to fill a notebook. We have another Archer and Olive notebook here, which was a reading journal, and I will be honest, I've abandoned this at the end of 2024. However, I'm really proud of some of the pages that I did in here, and I'm quite sad that I couldn't keep it up. It just turned out to be far too much work for me. Probably the approach I took was not right, and if I reviewed it, I might be able to come up with something else. But to be honest, I feel like if I had a reading journal in the future, it would need to be pre-printed and ready to go instead of me having to set up different pages for it. However, if you've got the time and the inclination to do something like this, then it is a good way to fill a notebook as well as keep thoughts and notes and quotes from various books that you might be reading. The last one, I guess, is more of a traditional diary. There's no stickers in it. It's just a space where I write about things. However, I haven't written in this since November 2025, and that's because my everyday journal tends to fill this purpose. I've written about some really difficult times of my life, as well as some really joyful times of my life in this notebook, and I haven't shared any pages from it because it is deeply personal. It is potentially something that I'll come back to if I feel the need in future, but for now it's mostly been retired.